Okay. Yeah, so welcome guys to the weekly meetup. So I want to give everyone a reminder just first of all that first and foremost, if you haven't already, please check the article that we posted, the blog post that we posted a while back on voting. And so this is for voting to considering whether we're going to continue to build Novusphere on EOS or not, whether we go that route or we follow status quo of going back to building our own chain to use. Voting ends in about a week, so please get your votes in if you haven't. And as a reminder, even if you don't have an opinion on the matter, and it doesn't really matter to you which route we go, I strongly recommend voting for both options rather than not voting at all, because it just helps us better gauge um, voter turnout. So please take a look into voting if you haven't already done that. So aside from that, I'll go over some of the things that have been going on as of recent this week. So last week we launched the forum, and it started to get a little more traction thanks to Fixed from our Discord sharing it with a few people on Reddit. Now we have ran into some problems with the forum over the course of this week. So I guess I'll start with the first problem that I recall us running into, and this happened about 2 days ago. So as a data source for the forum posts, we were using EOS Tracker. Now that is a block explorer for EOS, and EOS Tracker actually fell out of sync, and I'm not exactly sure what the technical problem was on their end, but it actually came to a halt, and it stopped importing new blocks from EOS. So when it fell behind, we fell behind with it, and so I contacted um, the creator of EOS Tracker, and he has been trying since then to get it back into sync. Um, That said, it still is having problems, but we started looking into alternative solutions as soon as we noticed that EOS Tracker was having problems. But hopefully he can fix his block explorer and get everything taken care of there. So after EOS Tracker started having problems, I moved on to implementing an alternative solution, which was using the block explorer EOS Flare, and I started implementing a fallback system, which kind of worked like, okay, well, if EOS Tracker isn't working, then try pulling the data from EOS Flare. And this worked for, I'd say about 2 days, maybe a day and a half. And in the process of while using EOS Flare, um, I actually came across an XSS vulnerability. So what that is, basically, it's when you as a user of a website can inject some data into a web page on that website and cause JavaScript to execute on other people who are viewing the website aside from yourself. So I actually came across an XSS vulnerability on EOS Flare, and I reported it to them. And when they fixed it, funny enough, their fix actually broke the way we were pulling data from them. So I kind of shot myself in the foot with that one. And so now their block explorer is kind of muddled as well because it doesn't properly display some transactions because they're trying to sort of strip out some of the content in transactions that could possibly lead to that vulnerability. But they're doing it in like I honestly, it's not like I can see their code, but it feels very hacky the way they're doing it because it's just getting really strange malformed results sometimes. So um, the end goal solution, the best solution possible, would have always been from the get-go, and I should explain why we didn't go that route, would be to run our own EOS node. Now, the reason we never opted to do that is because I don't see this as a long-term viable solution, because if we look down the road from now, running an EOS node could be very costly in terms of the RAM and disk space that it takes up. And not only that, but I believe that Novusphere DB needs to be self-hostable. So we needed a solution that didn't involve hosting an EOS node. Now, I was aware of a PR request that dealt with an API that once enabled, I would be able to actually use Block Producer's public API to do what I was basically using the block explorers for. Now, originally, I thought that no block producers were actually already running this update because I don't believe it's actually been merged to the main repo of EOS. But it seems actually there are quite a few block explorers that are already running this plugin update. So EOS New York being one of them. I haven't tried many others other than EOS Canada and EOS New York. But both of those are running the update. So now what I'm in the process of doing is I'm refactoring the code again so that it no longer uses EOS Tracker and it no longer uses EOS Flare, and instead it'll actually use the BP endpoints of the top 21 block producers to basically pull the data from the form. So because we're going to be relying on the top 21 block producers now instead of the block explorers, Novusphere DB shouldn't have any significant problems unless basically EOS itself had significant problems where it came to a halt where all 21 block producers went down and there were no replacements. So I'm currently in the process of working on this. And it's not fully implemented yet, but I'm looking to have it fully implemented within the next couple hours, and then I'll have it pushed to GitHub and I'll have the main site all up and running again. You can still at this time go on the EOS Form website, which is eos-form.novusphere.io, but you can't make any posts right now because we're not pulling in any new data. So I'm going to look to have that updated within the next couple hours and have that fixed and pushed to GitHub. And then aside from that, we have some upcoming changes on the form that I'm still also working on, which is post histories of individual users. So like when you click on a username, instead of taking you to the block explorer, it takes you to that person's post history. Being able to directly link to a post. So at this point in time, you can only link to threads, but we want the ability to link directly to a post that you may have made on a thread. So on Reddit, I believe they call this a permalink. And another thing that we're looking into is an upvote downvote system and an algorithm that'll follow with that. Now, I want to expand on the upvote downvote system a little bit because there was some discussion in our Discord regarding this, about how this can work. So I actually think it can work almost exactly the same as how Reddit works, and we won't see as large of Sybil cases in terms of Reddit because making an account on EOS at this time involves a cost. I'm not entirely sure how when Block One puts out their wallet and they start subsidizing account creation because they said they'll offer free accounts. I'm not sure how they plan on preventing people from abusing that. But I'm going to assume that it's going to be better than in the case of Reddit, where you can trivially create an account and then you can basically upvote, downvote, manipulate. Now, so for each post, you basically get one vote, which is you can either upvote it or downvote it. Now, one thing that we've discussed on the Discord is that if Atmos was moved over to EOS and we have this form, one way upvoting and downvoting could work is if you upvote someone and you want to upvote them like more, you can pay some Atmos to do that, and maybe half of that Atmos would go to them as a reward and half would get burned. Or if you want to downvote, then just the entire amount extra that you're going to pay will get burned. Now, the reason the entire amount can't go to them if it upvotes is because you'd end up with a feedback loop of someone. For example, they could just upvote their post as much as they want because they just received back the funds. So there has to be some loss of Atmos that occurs. It doesn't necessarily need to get burned. It could go into something like a community fund or something like that, but it does need to be removed from the actual user who's being upvoted and the person who is upvoting. And so I actually see this as potentially an advertisement use case. So, for example, if you want, if you're trying to advertise something and you want it at the very top of, the sub, then you're going to pay for some upvotes so that it stays at the very top of the sub. And I see this as a good way of just incentivizing people overall to post good content. I think that covers really what we were thinking in terms of the upvote downvote system, but there aren't really anything final on it. It's still something that's being discussed, and it won't be implemented, to say the least, unless we move over to EOS and we mint a token over there. And aside from that, we're open to discussion on how the upvote downvote system should work and how thread priority should work, since none of that's really been implemented, and we encourage people to give their thoughts on that. And lastly, the last point I'd like to touch on is a reminder about what is Novusphere and what this project is about. So this project it's a database of content that can't be censored, which leads to immutable content that can't be censored, and people can build applications on top of what we're working on. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea and start thinking Novusphere is just this form thing, or it's just about bounties per se, because it's not, right? It's more than that. And the form at the end of the day is just an example of an application built on top of Novusphere. There's so many other ways you can present this data to a user outside of a social context, like a typical streaming website, for example. So just keep that in mind in terms of the future. So I'm going to pass it over to Unicron if he has anything he wants to talk about in regards to like what he's been working on, what he's been looking into, and he can take it from there.
Sure, that was a great summary. I just quickly summarized that I see 3 ways to. Was I talking just now? Maybe not, but thanks for the intro and stuff. I think there's 3 ways to sort content, which is by typical date, count by accounts, and count by weight of each account to prevent Sybil attacks. Accounts alone is Sybil prone, but there is a cost to creating accounts, so there's some limit, like you said. I do think uploads and downloads combined is not the best because you kind of count things twice. If that makes sense. By uploading one person, downloading everybody else, you kind of vote for that person twice. So it's not necessary to have both. So I'm playing around with different HPP CPPs to make a bounty contract. I was having some trouble with this thing, but it's fine for now. Did you notice that a lot of contracts require a super user, or at least maybe the way I installed it? I probably should redo that. That's unique, I think.
Is a super user to deploy the contract, you mean?
Yeah, what is the point? Well, that's really strange to me.
I actually haven't tried deploying a contract at this point, so I'm not 100% sure, but in my understanding is a super user is a top 21, right? It's not just standby. And if I recall, on the mainnet, Generous, the creators of EOS Toolkit, they deployed the Poor Man token, and they are not a top 21 block producer. So I don't think on the mainnet you need to be top 21 to deploy. I think anyone can actually deploy a contract. But one thing to keep in mind is that when you deploy the contract, it's going to cost you a bit of RAM when you deploy the code and the ABI. And I don't know if there's any way to free that up. Like once the contract's been deployed, if there's a way to get back the RAM that contract is consuming, or if the only way you can get it back is to replace it with another contract. I haven't looked extensively into that at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to get it back is to basically wipe at least your account. they're changing the whole RAM system constantly. It's continuously under flux. So I'm not even sure what's, like I said before, it's not a well-defined system yet because it's very new. There's a whole proposal to introduce disk space to move basically long-term storage to the disk, and you have to still rent RAM instead of buy it, which will. So now you'd be buying hard disk space and not RAM space, which is like 1,000-fold increase in capacity.
Yeah, you're talking about the gray mass proposal,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
I thought the way the proposal worked, and maybe it's been a while since I read it, was disk would be very similar to how the resources on bandwidth and CPU works, which is like it's something you would passively have, and RAM, which is like active memory, would be something that you rent or you upgrade, like things that are in disk into RAM. But
Yes, you so short term you rent. Actually, I think it's slightly backwards. Short term you rent RAM, but because it's a renewable resource basically that you continuously can get same way as CPU and bandwidth. And now disk takes place of long term storage. That if you run out of RAM, because you rented it and somebody else needs it, you don't lose all the information. You don't have to wipe your contract to get that RAM back to sell it back or something. It's all stored on disk, which is
oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess I was not explaining it well. Yeah.
so you still have the benefit of really quick access and quick transaction verification of RAM, which is the whole point of like all the DPoS systems that Dan created to make them really, really fast. But you can store things long term when it's not necessary in the disk because you don't always need to keep everything in RAM that's not being active.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. But yeah, so I'm working on that. And what else? Somebody asked about how to check IPFS. I think submissions, right?
Yeah, I think somebody wanted like an I think you should just go over your explanation again about how we were gonna implement a policy to sort of proof of IPFS content to like see if it's alive.
Yeah, so the last time we were reading the IPFS literature is basically you have your own account on IPFS. Basically, you have a private key, public key, and you have a hash of a file you're supplying. And on IPFS, you can send this message to the network to see if somebody's feeding this file, and it'll come back with accounts that are seeding that file or sort of pinning it. I guess is the right term. They're pinning that file with a matching hash, or at least parts of it. And you can compare that to accounts listed on the blockchain that's submitted to provide that file to see who should be rewarded. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person who submitted that IPFS account is the same person as the person on IPFS, but it means that somebody is responsible for it, basically. So I think you might have occasionally people, submitting other people's files, but if that's what people requested, there's not much harm in them, using somebody else's pin when it's available. And if it's not available, then every node will know by checking IPFS directly. I don't know if that was too complicated, but basically you can check on IPFS who is pinning a file. And this we can test this around to see how sensitive it is to, I don't know, different upload speeds and so on. But I think it's pretty robust.
Yeah, so I think if unless you have anything you wanted to go over, if anyone has any additional questions, we can go over that.
I think I'm just really excited to deploy the first bounty contract. I want to really do that. Maybe I think this week, maybe a really basic one because we don't have like a lineup or anything.
Mm.
But we just have like super judges for now. It's not a real contract. It's not going to be a final contract. So I really don't like saying super judges, but this is just testing.
Yeah, it's great. It's good to hear that good progress is being made on that stuff. And then just to give the listeners context of this, the stuff I'm working on is fairly separate from the stuff Unicron is working on, so that we don't like overlap too heavily with each other and like get in each other's way. So the stuff that he's working on later, we would basically come together and build something that connects both of them.
Yeah, and the bounty system will be like the what creates content basically for the platform, improves the platform over time, and then Asphyxia is handling all the communication and you know all the posts and the interface with the front side and so on.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, we're open to that. Okay, I don't think there's going to be any questions, so I just want to give everyone a reminder again. Please vote. Next week will be the end of the vote. At the next meeting, I'm going to look to announce the results of what the vote is, and then what our plan is going forward from there once we have the concrete results in. And anything other than that, if you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to us on the Discord, and we're happy to help answer those questions. Thank you.
Thanks.